Welcome to the St. Louis Cardinals Daily Podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I'm here to cover your Redbirds every single day. And the Redbirds have actually been active, making one of their bigger moves of the offseason and probably one of the biggest moves, other than a Brendan Donovan trade, that we will see this offseason, signing veteran right-handed pitcher Dustin May to a one-year deal per Katie Woo of The Athletic, who we've since lost, guess who, to the Dodgers. Katie, we love you. We miss you. Remember us now that you've made it big. Anywho, the Cardinals finally made an excellent signing the big, tall, flame-throwing, red-headed right-handed pitcher who was at one point one of the best prospects in baseball, undeniably one of the most fun to watch. Everyone saw this guy pitch in 2019 and were tantalized. And ever since then, it has been downhill for Dustin May, and he finds himself now coming on over to the Cardinals. This is a very exciting trade for the Cardinals because the stuff he has when it's right is one of the tops in baseball. But lately it hasn't been just that, and one of the biggest reasons has been injury. Now, I talked last podcast about Dustin May, but I wanted to get a little bit more into what his stats have looked like, what his journey has been like, so we can get a better idea of what the Cardinals' potential ace or number two in the rotation may be looking like next year and what the ramifications are for the Cardinals and what we could do in addition to that down the line. So to recover some of the Dustin May stuff we talked about a little bit, he's got a 3.86 career ERA in 57 starts at 71 total games, which is pretty good. I mean, 3.86, it's not, prime Clayton Kershaw or Greg Maddux, but that's a pretty solid ERA for a guy who's just 28 years old, is supposed to be in his prime still. We take that. And when he's healthy, he features a high 90 sinker that moves like it's a frisbee and a sweeper that's one of the best in baseball. And he had that in 2019. And he had that in 2020, never experiencing any sort of injury woes, having an excellent career as a healthy young man. And that's when everything hit. Just like everyone else's lives fell apart after 2020, so did Dustin May's. In 2021, he gets hit with Tommy John and has to miss the majority of that season. And that takes him out the rest of 2022 as well, because Tommy John is an absolute pain in the butt to deal with. Not something we want to see for anybody, especially a guy the Cardinals just signed, but he's years past it. Well, in 2023, he had to get a redo on that Tommy John surgery after just 9 starts. And in 2024, he was back and healthy with a perfectly repaired arm, ready to get back into things and figure out his pitching regimen again. And then salad struck. Yes, you heard that right. Dustin May somehow suffered a rare esophagus injury eating salad one day. And then I guess it was the next day, or at least later on, he was eating dinner and realized the ramifications of the injury. He had to have emergency surgery. So, Ma, you hear that? You hear that, Mom? Yeah, salads are bad for you. All right? Get off my case. But Dustin May truly had one of the craziest injuries we could even imagine. It took him out for the 2024 season entirely, and then he came back down a ton of weight because the 6'6" giant athletic guy couldn't eat food with a damaged esophagus. This salad did him in, and now he came back in 2025 and had the most innings pitched in his career. He pitched 132 innings. The issue? Dustin May was not back to being the Dustin May that he was earlier in his career. So I want to talk about more of what happened in 2025 because people have to look at that, and that's Dustin May on the trajectory he was on. He was going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball. He was going to be signing at this point in his career, this is where you're supposed to sign his $100 million, $200, $300 million contract. But instead, he's signing a one-year deal, probably somewhere $10 to $20 million with the St. Louis rebuilding Cardinals. Now, I think there's a shot. I read the comments, folks. I see your comments. I love the comments. Comments your thoughts below all the time. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion the Cardinals are bad next year. I don't think it's a guarantee. If you look at our projections on any credible website, Fangraphs is my favorite, we're supposed to be really bad next year. Now, anything can happen. We've seen greatness. I think our lineup will be okay. Our rotation's supposed to be abysmal. But he's found himself here. Why? Because 2025 was terrible. If you guys have heard of a stat called Stuff Plus, it's a great stat that Fangraph tracks, and guys like Eno Saris on The Athletic do a great job of talking about and getting more into. But it's a stat that shows you how good the guy's pitching arsenal is. Nothing about control. Nothing about how well they actually use it or how well they actually get guys out with it. It's purely when that pitch is thrown, what's the velocity, what's the break on it, how wicked does this guy's stuff look? Well, throughout his career, he has a Stuff Plus of 117. And in 2025, that fell to 101. Now, for those who know Stuff Plus, you know that's a big drop. To be honest with you, you have to look at some of these stats because they're reference stats. This is one of those stats that has an average of 100, kind of like OPS plus or ERA plus. 117 Stuff Plus, which is what May was at, that's Garrett Crochet numbers. That's Cy Young Award winning numbers that he was at before these injuries got him. And then he fell to 101. To perfectly average numbers. That fastball fell with still great movement with that sinker, but fell down in the around 95 instead of up in the upper 90s. And that sweeper went from the best sweeper in baseball, bar none, to just a really good sweeper. 101's basically average. And there are plenty of guys with average stuff who dominate baseball. Yoshinobu Yamamoto has a 98 Stuff Plus last year. So guys can definitely dominate with that. And that's what Dustin May has to get used to doing. So 2 hopes for the Cardinals in this. 1, Dustin May gets to having Garrett Crochet-esque things, the 117 Stuff Plus, the absolute flamethrower with a sweeper that nobody could possibly touch. He had a 1.089 whip with that thing whenever he was having one of his best seasons in 2020. He was phenomenal. That's what the Cardinals are hoping for. Shoot, you take that guy, you don't even trade him. You sign that guy to a lucrative extension. You hand him a blank check and you say you can stay here as long as you want, buddy. Maybe not quite that much with the injuries, but you see what I mean. The other option is Dustin May still has MLB-esque stuff. This isn't 40-some-year-old Adam Wainwright at the end of his career with a sinker that just barely gets over the plate and he has to trick you with timing and all that stuff. He's got MLB stuff still. Things that work better than other all-star level pitchers. He's just got to learn to work with it. We see this all the time with players as they age. This just might have hit Dustin May a little bit earlier because of the crazy injuries. I think he could get back healthy, and then maybe if he doesn't get up to a 117 Stuff Plus, maybe he's up to 110, which is still incredible company to be in, and he learns to pitch with that. Or he gets back to pitching the way he was, or he learns to pitch with the stuff he has. Both are very likely. Both he's going to have time to work around. That's why you sign with the St. Louis Cardinals. You take the money, pitch a place that's going to love you, and you end up learning how to pitch again, which happens all of the time in baseball. So this is a great signing for the Cardinals. And guess what? It's a 1-year deal. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. You dump him at the end of the season if he's bad. And if he's just middle of the road, we trade him, buy us some prospects. We see bad teams do it all the time. It's the Cardinals' turn to be that team. So the Cardinals' rotation is shaping up to look very different than it has in year past. So I want to talk about what it looks like now and what we could do to keep bolstering it. Because if we want any shot at doing anything next year or just guys to eat innings, we could use more guys. Listen to this rotation right now. At the top, not too terrible. Matthew Liberatore, Dustin May. If those were our 3 and 4 or 4 and 5, I would be ecstatic. Unfortunately, that is our 1 and 2 combo right now at the top. Matthew Liberatore, who's never been an ace for his staff, and Dustin May, who's never pitched more than 135 innings in his career. Not where you want to be. Andre Palante pitched a good amount of innings last year. They were terrible innings. I wish he hadn't pitched them. It was kind of Miles Mikolas-esque, but, he still threw some. He ate them. That's our third starting pitcher. Our fourth is Michael McGreevy right now. He's an exciting young rookie. He doesn't have crazy good stuff. I think he could certainly be. He's a guy we definitely want to see pitching this year. So I'm not upset he's in the rotation, but that's our fourth pitcher. Our fifth is Kyle Leahy, a reliever who's never been a starter in the big leagues before. And then the guy next to that is Richard Fitts, who had a 5 ERA last year. Now, he was also suffering injuries. I'm very excited to see what Richard Fitts could be in the Cardinals uniform coming over from Boston. I'm not doubting him in any way, but that's our starting rotation. So people who keep saying in the comments that we're going to compete next year, I'm rooting for it, man. I see upside, but upside doesn't mean actual wins in the stat book. So the Cardinals could definitely use some more, probably one more arm in the rotation to eat innings nonetheless. We haven't had a guy sniff anything above 160 innings in this rotation. I think Palante was the only one who got to that number last year. So the Cardinals could use arms to help. We had crazy injury luck last year in our rotation. So we probably need more guys to eat innings. And so I wanted to toss out a couple options out there and just the guys who are in the Cardinals ballpark so that you guys could get an idea of what we might be bringing in. I'm not saying anything spectacular. We're truly not trying to compete next year. But one such guy, on top of some of the minor leaguers we could bring in, is a couple of old heads, a couple categories. Figure we're bringing in an old guy. The first case of guys is the old olds, I call them. It's Justin Verlander, who just pitched last year to the tune of 152 innings and a 3.85 ERA. Talk about a guy who's learning how to pitch again. 40-some-year-old Justin Verlander is learning how to pitch again without elite stuff that he used to have. He had a fine season last year. He's projected to sign a 1 or 2 year contract with somebody. I think he might end up going back to San Francisco or probably a contender. But if Justin just wants to keep his career going, nobody wants to bite at the apple, that's absolutely someone the Cardinals could bring in, let him pitch his heart out, do whatever he wants, teach the guys in the clubhouse what it's like to be a big leaguer, because that's one of the biggest things. Dustin May is now the oldest guy projected to be a starter on our rotation at a ripe age of 28. All the other guys are even younger than that. I think that'd make a lot of sense. And speaking of old guys, Max Scherzer is also out there. Everybody in St. Louis would love to see the St. Louis maniac, psychopath with 2 different colored eyes come in and stare down opposing pitchers. If you want a guy who's going to tell you how it is and smack you around a little bit, it's Max Scherzer. We'd love to see him back. Now, he only pitched 85 innings last year to the tune of a 5.19 ERA. He'd be a bona fide pitching coach if he came to us, not going to lie to you, but it's a name that could possibly come our way. Some lesser olds that I'd be a little bit excited to see. The most exciting signing we could make at this point after Dustin May came through is a Tyler Mahle, 31-year-old who's projected to sign a 2-year, $32 million total contract, so about $16 million a year. Money the Cardinals have, not crazy lucrative money, but that's a guy who could stick around, and again, if he does well, he could be a part of the winning Cardinals in a year or two. Now, he pitched last year 86 innings coming off of injury to the tune of a 2.18 ERA. Baseball Savant loves what he was putting out, projects him to do even better next year. Issue is he's only eclipsed 130 innings one time in his career. So another guy who hasn't proved he can stay healthy, which is why he's in the Cardinals' range. Otherwise, his stuff is pretty good. It's a lot like Dustin May in this way. Another guy, Michael Lorenzen, a guy we've known pitching in the Midwest. That's why I think this one makes sense, having pitched in Detroit, having pitched in Kansas City, and having pitched for a long time in Cincinnati. Michael Lorenzen, 34-year-old, would make a lot of sense for the Cardinals. He had 141 innings pitched last year to a 4.64 ERA. That doesn't sound fantastic. Fangraphs projects him to have a 4.08 ERA next year, because in 2024, he had a 3.31, and in 2023, he had a 4.18 ERA. Put him in a place like Busch, we can get him to right around the cusp of that 4 ERA, which again is not phenomenal, but it's a guy who's been around the league, could be good for your clubhouse, come in and teach the young guys and eat some innings. Go to a 6-man rotation, get these guys going places. Just to toss it out there, blitz some other names that are out there. These are guys that are projected to sign a 1-year deal per Fangraphs. All guys above 30. Nick Martinez, right-handed pitcher, was just with Cincinnati. Aaron Savali, right-handed pitcher, was just with Chicago. Jose Quintana, left-handed pitcher, who was just with Milwaukee. We know him well in St. Louis already. Chris Paddock, right-hander who just was with Detroit, previously with Minnesota. Marcus Stroman, flame out, who was just with the New York Yankees. Zach Eflin, a righty from Baltimore, and potentially a reunion with Jordan Montgomery, the old lefty who suffered a season-ending injury last year and is now on the market, looking for a team to let him come in, throw some innings. Again, a guy who's old, a vet, the Cardinals know, could come in and help the clubhouse. So the Cardinals looking to turn a new page next year. Thank you for turning into the St. Louis Cardinals Daily Podcast. Again, I am Andrew Teuscher, helping cover your Redbirds every single day.